Welcome to Keep the Game Beautiful podcast. Each week, I highlight incredible people who are doing amazing things in soccer, the beautiful game. I'm Anna Turi, your host. Thank you for listening. Today, when I talk to Shaun Soderling, we discuss yet again another very difficult topic. As we all know lately, the world has been hurting and angry. It's hard for many, including myself, to understand what is happening and why people are treated so poorly in the world today. This episode is very important to listen to, especially during these times. Listening to Shaun talk, I was able to understand why the Black Lives Matter movement is very important. I hope you're able to learn from this episode and maybe hopefully understand what a person of color may go through a little bit better. Today's guest is Shaun Soderling. You'll probably recognize his voice from the SoccerChat podcast. Shaun has coached at the high school, club, and collegiate levels. He recently joined the staff of Brescia University. He is high energy, positive, and a lot of fun to be around. One of the main reasons I asked Shaun to join me today was because I wanted to talk about why the world is hurting so much and what we can do to make it better. Shaun, would you like to take a second and give us more of a background on yourself?
Been in the game for a while. I've been coaching for about 18 years, as you kind of said, through high school and college and club. And, I grew up in Southern Indiana. I was born in Evansville, actually where I currently live at. But I grew up in a very small town called Boonville, Indiana. And I'm sure just by hearing that name, you can probably get some ideas on what that town was like. Was a multi-sport athlete, played soccer, football, basketball, golf, and, I felt like I had a very good upbringing. And as we'll kind of divulge more into it, grew up with a single mother. I am biracial, which I guess is, for me, this is why this time period is so important. And, I've spent some time, kind of bouncing around the Southern Indiana area, coaching various places, and got into teaching from coaching, and then that's where I met my wife at. And we have made the journey from where we originally lived to we moved to Evansville, and then we took a couple years that we were actually in Michigan, and then we've come back to Evansville to where this is our home for us. And my wife is a principal in our school corporation, and I've got 2 children that are constantly bouncing off the walls. You probably might hear them every now and then. So for us, the game with what your podcast is, keeping the game beautiful. That's kind of what our job is as parents now, is, not just the game of soccer, but the game of life, of trying to keep it as beautiful as possible.
On this podcast, I always start with the same 3 questions. So first, what does the beautiful game mean to you?
The beautiful game is everything to me. And it's not just about the way the game is played. It's not just about certain moves or tactics and things along those lines. The beautiful game is all about being there with the ball, with the goals, whether there's a crowd or no crowd, whether it's 2v2 or 11v11, the game doesn't change. It's still the same. It still has the same purpose. And, I think my wife does a very good job of explaining it, because she's not a soccer person. I think she played when she was 6 for a year and then stopped playing. She was telling someone about how she's gotten in soccer, and she just said the buildup of a play and the buildup to that moment when a goal happens. And we can say when the goal does happen, because sometimes we have a 0-0 game, but when a goal happens, there's just something about the artsiness of it, that is just such a beautiful thing to see. And I don't know if it's because it's on a bigger surface than like a basketball court would be, but there's just the overall visual of the game being played, to me, is what makes it beautiful.
What are actions or things you do to keep the game beautiful?
That's a very good question. I don't think that I ever try to do anything specifically or with intent to make the game beautiful. I think the biggest thing that I do is just try to promote the love for the game. I have a lot of friends who are not soccer fans, but every 4 years they call me up, "Hey, are we watching the World Cup?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." through that, I try to explain the game to them, and I try to get them connected with an MLS team or Premier League team, or, just I find some way to get it connected to where they start developing it more. It's been really cool now at my age of how many people I went to high school with that, soccer was not a big thing where I grew up at. And, how many friends of mine in high school, maybe may have made fun of soccer or ridiculed me, whatever. Well, now all their kids are playing soccer, and they're like travel soccer parents, or they're like big time rec soccer parents. And they're like, I am a soccer dad, I'm a soccer mom. And I'm like, where was this at like 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, actually, when y'all would make fun of me for soccer. Now look at you, here you are supporting your kids. So, every time that my friends from high school post something about their kids playing soccer, I'm always commenting on it and liking it, and, always offering to help as much as I can, because I want to develop that love for the game that's given me so much in anyone who's looking for a new game to follow.
How do you encourage others to keep the game beautiful?
I think you keep the game beautiful by respecting it, playing it the right way, doing everything to prepare for it the right way, and truly embracing the fact that it takes multiple cogs in the wheel. If I said that correctly, I'm always bad with analogies. But it takes multiple pieces to make the game work. So you've got to respect the game. You've got to respect the people who are a part of it, the referees included, the opposing teams, your own teammates, and that in turn will keep the game beautiful.
So one of your most recent podcast releases, when Nick Rizzo took the lead. Why is it important for a person like me that's white to ask these important questions?
I think it's important for white people, and and being biracial, that's even just saying it's hard for me to say, is to say white people. I grew up in a white family, and so it's always hard for me to be like, oh, white people need to do this, but it's also hard for me to say black people, blah, 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 blah. But I think the reason why, and in that show specifically, to have Nick ask the questions, was when this all kind of got started and I started voicing my opinion about it. Nick reached out to me and said, there are so many questions that I have, and I've never asked, and I need to ask those questions. And I know that there are a lot others who are like him, like yourself, a lot of our other listeners, a lot of our Twitter followers who are in the same boat as you, white, and you have all these questions, and maybe you're to reach out to an African-American friend of yours, it's kind of, there's a fear to ask them these questions because you don't know if it's going to upset them, or you also don't know what their response is going to be. So I really felt the need that, I kind of joked with him when I said, make it awkward, because that's how you're going to learn. If you try to sugarcoat it, if you try to make it textbook interviewee type stuff, people are going to recognize that it's a lie. Like, you're just reading questions and going from there. I was like, it needs to be awkward for you, because a real discussion about it is awkward. And so I thought he did such a great job. I can tell you, he probably won't like me saying this, but he was so nervous for that. And we had done a little bit of work to get ready for it. And I know that he had reached out to some people earlier in the day just to kind of run the questions by them to see what their thoughts were. And I was just so proud of him for how well he did. Because for me, I didn't feel like it was my place to really be involved in the conversation. I didn't want to take away from the amazing guests that we had. And B, I also didn't want to take away from, I wanted someone who was listening to it, like yourself, like Nick, to be able to feel like they were Nick. Like, we wanted to make sure that he was asking questions that you or any other listeners that are white to our show are questions that they may have. And so I think he did a really good job of making it feel like you were in the conversation, like it was you that was asking the questions.
So why is it important to keep as a team open so they can ask questions during this time too?
You have to know how people feel. If you think about a culture with a team, you've got to understand people. You got to understand where they've come from. You got to understand what they've been through. There's a big thing in education right now called social emotional learning. It is something that I I never knew about it, but apparently I use it. And then once I learned about SEL, I really started embracing it. And that's how I build relationships with students that I've worked with in schools, but also with my teams as well. And for me, I believe that those conversations have to happen within a team. I'll mention my own team that I'm with now. I've only been with them for 7 weeks, and the topic got brought up, and I had always said that our team's biggest problem is that they didn't know each other. Like I see you at practice, I see you at games, I see you on campus, but you don't know them. And so it was a great conversation to where our players of color on our team spoke up and talked about their own experiences and their own experiences currently, not just stuff that happened before they became a part of the program. And I mentioned on our show about this like obliviousness, and I don't mean that in like a negative way, but I think it's you see all over the internet. There's a picture or a meme that talks about privileges when something's not a problem to you because it's not a problem to you personally, like it doesn't affect you, so you don't really think that it's a problem, you don't see that it's a problem. And I feel like when our players opened up about their experiences, you could see how this obliviousness was, oh my gosh, I never recognized that. And it was never like our players were like saying, I think you're a racist because you don't include me on things. But what it was also eye-opening for our team to say was, yeah, I've got my group here and my group is okay. And you've got your group over there. Your group is okay. So we're all okay. But when that group over there that features players of color or players that may look different than someone else, when they're constantly excluded, even though their group is fine and our group is fine, you don't recognize how that can be viewed. So I think it was so awesome of our team to talk about it and be open about it, because our team is I mean, we basically have a lot of white female student athletes on our team, just a handful of African Americans and Hispanics, and I was so proud of the conversation. There was never any arguing or I don't believe in that. It really allowed also too for some of our players who are now very vocal about the Black Lives Matter movement. They were never, I don't know that they were scared to open up about it or how active they were with it, but it gave them the opportunity to really educate some of our team on some matters and some things. And here's how you can help. And here's what I'd like to do. And our team released a statement just recently. And, that was all the girls. The only thing I did was put the words on a picture. And I, as a biracial male, I so proud of those girls and their words. Like, you felt them and their mission that they basically mentioned at the end of like the steps they're going to take. Cause I think that's the big thing is a lot of people are saying Black Lives Matter, what can we do? Well, there's that next step. What are you going to do? And I think that our girls did an excellent job of stating why Black Lives matter to them and why, all these racial and social injustices are wrong, but they also finished with, here's the steps we're going to take going forward to try to prevent these things. And it was so moving and so motivating, that like I said, proud as I am, if there was a better word than proud, that's what I am.
When growing up, what do you wish a player or coach did differently?
All my coaches in any sport never treated me any differently. And I don't know if that's because of who my mom was and who my grandparents were. That I lived with my mom and my grandparents up until high school. Then my mom and I had our own place. So I don't know if they treated me normal because of that. But no. And if we played against a team that had someone of color on it, there was never that's who to go after. There was never any of that. So I'm very fortunate that my coaches were like that. However, I can't exactly say the same thing about teammates I had. Um, there are things I think I wish some teammates would have done a little bit differently. But as far as coaches, I think my coaches, again, I don't know if my experience is different just because of where I grew up at, who I grew up with. I think had I grown up on my dad's side of the family, I could see where there would be a difference. But for me, I think that's a hard one to answer just because I don't think I was treated any differently just because of, I think it probably has to do with who I grew up with.
How should others support teammates of color during this time?
Be vocal. I mentioned on our show, right now for me, it's a time where I'm wanting to see my friends and family that are supporting my friends and family. And if you have a teammate who is African American, Hispanic, as long as they're not, those who are not white, the best way you can support them isn't just, it's more than just calling them or texting them and asking them how they're doing and, letting them know like that you support them. It's letting everyone know that you support them. And I know that can be hard. Like I actually had a player reach out to me just the other night and was like, Coach, like, I listened to the podcast and I was so moved by what you were talking about. And myself as, as a person of color, like I've always been afraid to talk. And, now I realize I've got to go outside of that. I've got to talk. I've been so impressed with, the support that I've seen from people, not just on me, but just support that people have been giving this racial movement that's going on. A lot of people have been outspoken about it. And I've been super, super, super proud and impressed with my wife as well. She's been very vocal this whole time. And she works at a school in our kind of like our downtown area, which would most places would call it inner city, but we're not big enough, I think, for an inner city. She works at a school with a lot of African American kids whose home lives are hard to even think about. And I was very lucky to work at that school for a little bit. And I believe that her experiences there have really allowed her to really be even more open about this, because it's more than just George Floyd to her. And I think she made a very good comment today, actually, on one of her posts about the next George Floyd is 5, 8 years old, 13 years old. And those are the kids that are in her building. And so she wants to make sure that they are not attacked just for what they look like. I think the more that you can support the people vocally, support your teammates as loud as you can, because there may be someone else who's afraid to say something of support, but they know you well enough and they say, if they're saying something about it, I can say something too. So for me personally, because I know some people, going to protest are not for everybody. I totally get that. But you can still be vocal with your platforms that you're giving. I think that's the kind of like I talked on the show about social media. Like everyone has a voice. Unfortunately, everyone has a voice, but everyone has a voice and it's a loud voice. And unfortunately, everyone has a voice and it's loud voice. And if enough people who support the movement and can say Black Lives Matter, the more people say those 3 words on their platforms, social media and out in public, stuff like that, the more it's going to sink in. And I was never, it wasn't that I wasn't a supporter of everything that's going on. I was just never very, very vocal. And I would never say the all lives matter. And I wouldn't say the Black Lives Matter either. I would just say, we've got to fix things. And I think I finally realized like enough is enough. Like it's Black Lives Matter. And so I think for me, I saw a great clip the other day. I wish I could remember who said it, but it was just like, it was the Indianapolis Colts general manager, Chris Ballard. They had a press conference on Zoom, and he just said first thing, he's like, I'm not going to talk about football. He said, but what I do want to say is Black Lives Matter. And he stopped and he paused and he said, I don't freaking understand how hard it is for people to say those three words. It's three words, Black Lives Matter. And he's like, what we have is not a black problem. We have a white problem. And as a white problem, we've got to come to the grips and say Black Lives Matter. And not to get like super religious or anything, but I'm a believer. I'm not the best Christian in the world. I don't claim to be, but I do attend church, and I grew up in a church. And I heard a preacher the other day say, Jesus said, blessed are those the poor. No one interrupted Jesus and said, actually, blessed are all people, Jesus. No. And I have it in my mind right now that like if this was the end of times and like Jesus came down and was like, Black Lives Matter, I don't think anyone in their right mind, even with all the like crazy people in the world, I don't think anyone would go, but I don't know about that. Actually, I think all lives matter. And it's hard for me to process that that's the way that we think. And I think that was something that really like, I posted a video of the preacher saying it the other day, and I had a couple of friends reach out and they were like, I was always like the all lives matter crowd. They're like, until I watched that video, and it made me realize like, oh my gosh. And the story of the 100 sheep, 99 were okay. One went away. And, just because he went after the one sheep didn't mean he didn't care about the other 99 sheep. And I think too, like kids have such a funny way of putting things that are so correct. Like, one of our mutual friends, Dawn Crow, had her son the other day. She had to tell all of us because it was just super, super funny. And I wish I could remember like verbatim what he said. She goes, oh yeah, he goes, saying Black Lives Matter is not like saying others don't. It's like when we say save the whales, we're not forgetting all the other sea creatures. And I was like, 5-year-olds get this. 5-year-olds get this. And like we were talking with our daughter, and she was like basically saying like the same thing, and it just like it racked my brain. I was like, what is so hard to understand about that? So support the teammates and say the words Black Lives Matter. That's the support. If that's the only way you're going to support is just say those three words, you have no idea how powerful those three words are.
So you'd mentioned using your platform and for a voice. So how could people like me who are a little shy realize how important it is to be more brave?
Think about how brave all those people are speaking up at protest. Think about how brave all of the African Americans who have to honestly worry that everything they do, someone might kill them. I can't imagine or begin to understand what that has to be like, to constantly be worried that someone's going to try to kill you, or somebody's going to try to hurt you. There's a good story about a professor the other day who was walking to go get lunch in between classes and was stopped because he had on a blazer coat and a knit hat. And the police stopped him and said, you match the description of a burglary that just took place. The lady had called, and he was like, I'm a professor at the university right down the street. And they're like, where's your car? And he's like, up in this parking garage. They're like, well, you match the description. He was like, because I'm black. And they're like, around this height, around this weight, puffy jacket and a knit hat. And he kind of laughed. He said, well, this hat that I'm wearing was handmade. It's the only one that's ever been made like this with these colors and this design. Can you define the hat? And, they're like, we're going to take you downtown. And he was like, no, like I'm a college professor. Like, I'm not going to, I'm not like, if I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to resist arrest, but I'm not having you load me up in a cop car just because I match a description of a felon. or, of a criminal. And, time went on. And so they were going to bring instead of him having to go downtown, they decided they would bring the lady who called in the robbery to him. And I guess like a couple more backups had showed up, and finally one of them was just like, oh, this isn't him. Sir, you can go back. Well, he lost his lunch hour. He's got to go straight back to work. Oh, and by the way, again, he's a college professor. He's got to teach a class. And he mentioned to his class, he's like, it's going to be really hard for me to teach. Just had this moment where he was clearly shook. I can't think of what that has to be like to do that every day. Mario Fuchs made a great point. I think on our show, or actually, no. We have a college coaches call on Tuesday nights. And, I had mentioned that I haven't had that many incidences where race has come involved. And he kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, he goes, but, when you get pulled over, you know exactly what color you are. And it like dawned on me, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I've only been pulled over like 4 times. And one time I had a police officer that was super, super, super nice. The other times they weren't so nice. And anybody who knows me knows like I'm the slowest driver in the world. So you can't when I'm getting whizzed by on the highway by 7 cars, like don't pull me over and say I'm going 15 over. Like that's not possible. And then for the cop to continue to say that, and then I actually had one of my players, because his family's vehicle had broken down, so I was taking him to the game, and to have this white 15-year-old tell the officer like, we just got passed by 6 cars. He's going 5 under. Like there's no way he was going 15 over. And that was the moment I didn't get a ticket. Like you could clearly see it. And like, they always say like, walk a mile in my shoes. I can't fathom. I'm so thankful that my father lives in a place where everyone loves him. Everyone loves his family. They're very involved in their community and have been for a long time. I can't imagine what it would be like if he lived somewhere else, because he honestly would have to fear every day. And that's the thing I hope that people think about, and what the real big difference is you got to put yourself in their shoes and just wonder what every move you make. I've been places where anybody who's seen pictures of my kids, I've been places where it's just being me and my kids, and people have walked up and talked about how cute and adorable my kids are, and then asked me, where's their father at? Like that, like for real? Like why? Like what am I, like the crazy uncle? Like one of the times I can distinctly remember it happening, I think Duke was like, maybe he was not even a year old, and I was asked like where the father was, and I was just like, what insane uncle would take a newborn out for lunch? Like, like that just doesn't happen. So it just understand and just think about that fear that they live in every single day. I couldn't imagine living in a New York, living in a California, living in an Atlanta, or let me phrase that, an LA or an Atlanta or Minneapolis or Texas. I'm so thankful to live where I do, because it's not something that we have to fear. But I can't think of a reason why in this world someone should wake up every day wondering if this is going to be the day. And that sucks. That absolutely sucks. And no one should have to think about that. No one.
You had talked a little bit about faith as well. This was a big part of the civil rights change before. What are some of the other groups that will bring us together?
Real people. Even with faith, there's people who are perceived as real, but they're not. Again, I grew up in a church. My uncle is a preacher. My grandfather was a Southern gospel recording artist. So I've been around it, and I've never. I attend church myself. I make sure that my kids are raised in it as well. But the amount of fakeness is something that deeply disturbs me. I don't understand how someone can go to a church and to hear about, the way you treat people, the way Jesus would want people to be treated. And, this is what, this is how you live life. And for those people, like, I really want to refrain from getting like super political, but here's something I do think about. I think there are people who think, yes, Black Lives Matters, but they know who they voted for, if that makes sense. And who they voted for is someone who is escalating these things. And I was in church before the pandemic happened, obviously. And there was an older gentleman sitting, I think it was either the row in front of me or the pew, the row that we were sitting in. I'd seen him there for weeks and months and years. And I've always seen him, older guy, seems super, super nice. And he showed up and had on all of his Trump gear on in church. And I kind of sat back and like, it distracted me from what the lesson was and what the preacher was talking about. And our preacher, but just by chance as well, is from India. So I was just sitting there like, you like this, I won't say the word propaganda, but just this walking billboard that you're doing right now isn't telling me that you're paying attention. Because if you're paying attention and and this person, this guy, and honestly, I've never even spoken with him. I just see him every Sunday in church, and I see, how he praises the Lord and stuff like that with his wife, and God bless him. He's a very, very big man of faith, but I don't see how, as someone of faith who's real in their faith, can say, that's my leader. Like again, I don't want to be political, but I don't understand how that can be the case. But you have a lot of people of faith who, again, when I say the groups that can help, it's the people who are real, is the people who are saying, no, that this isn't how this is supposed to be. And you are seeing, you're seeing the Pope come out. You're seeing various, and I'm not Catholic, so I always mess up the words, but like the priest, the diocese, and you're seeing all these preachers that are coming out and saying, hey, no, this is not how this is to be. Those are the people that need to be leading us. Those are the people who can be helping. And I think that we have to embrace more of those people. We have to, and we got to embrace the leaders of color as well. So it's not just, hey, where's the white Christian preacher to tell us what the Lord wants us to do and how to act. The mayor in Atlanta, Keisha Bottoms, is so powerful when she speaks. And if no one's heard from her, like heard one of her conferences, go listen to when the Atlanta riot just started the other night and listen to her talk about the way she was speaking to the city of Atlanta was the exact same words she used to her own 15-year-old kids. Spoke so well. People want to discredit Barack Obama for the way he spoke, but like those are the people who we've got to open our ears and listen. I always say that when it comes to like when we pick our captains for our team, I always tell our teams, just because someone's the most popular doesn't mean that they're the best leader. And so there are many people out there who are not the most popular people, but they're the best leaders. And those are the ones, those real leaders are the ones that we need to be following behind in all this. And maybe it's not even on a national scale. Maybe there's someone that you know of. Maybe it's a friend who, is very vocal about it. Or for me, Mario Feeks is going to hate that I keep bringing his name up all the time. But Mario's the assistant women's coach at Southern Utah University. Mario is the leader. This guy, when any platform he's been given this week to speak on this guy has just rocked my world. And I've sat back and said, like, if there was not a national person that I would want to follow, or if there wasn't, some regional person to follow, like I'm following what Mario's saying. And if he's telling me that I've got to do something, then that's what I'm going to go do. So I think you've got to find that real person that you believe what they believe what they say, and their actions show it.
So in thinking about leaders and where they come from, what are things you look for in a leader?
A leader to me, especially in this certain time period, I guess, a leader to me is someone who unifies, doesn't divide, and works to make things better, works to get the job done. A good leader is not afraid to step on toes, but I think there's also a difference between stepping on people's toes and just being a straight up butthole just to be one. And I'm very happy for censoring myself there. A great leader is someone who's respected by all. You may not agree with what they say, but you respect them. And because you respect them, if they give you a task, you're going to do it to the best ability because you don't want to disappoint them, because you respect them. Just like as a player yourself, there's got to be a coach that you had that you respected so much that you never wanted to let them down. You never wanted to hear those words, "I'm disappointed." Kind of the same thing as a child yourself. I was a child at one time. I think my wife would tell you that I'm still a child. And I think so would everyone else. And you probably would say that I'm still a child as well. But the one thing you never want to hear your parents tell you is not that they're mad at you, not that they're upset with you. You never want to hear your parents tell you that they're disappointed in you. That's the gut wrencher. That's like, oh, like you could have said everything to like break me down, but you had to say that you were disappointed in me. And so then it makes you realize, like, I want to make sure I'm doing everything not to disappoint them. So for me, a leader, the best leaders are the ones that you respect. You listen to what they say, you respect their opinions, and you say, okay, I can do that, apply it to my life or apply it to this task I've got to do. And I'm going to make sure I do it to the best of my ability because I don't want to disappoint you. And I think that's something that we lack. Because again, I think, as I said earlier, just because you're the most popular doesn't mean that you're the best leader.
So if someone hears something or sees something that hurts them, or a teammate says or does something, what should they say or do?
If someone on your own team, I'll go at this from a player standpoint, which I'm kind of assuming that was kind of the direction of the question, was from a player standpoint. If I'm a teammate and I'm seeing a teammate of mine post something, I'm seeing a teammate of mine saying something, participating in something, instantly the first step is talk to them directly. It's not going to a coach, it's not going to a director, whatever. It's saying something to them personally, because that one-on-one, that peer talk, you hope gets the job done. And if it doesn't, then that's where you take that next step up. I think too, that's where you have the conversation with a player, a teammate. When we talked about respect, like you don't have to be best friends with every single person on your team. But if you have a team full of people that respect each other, yeah, they don't hang out all the time. They don't go to the movies, everybody together. But if they respect each other, they're going to train and they're going to play in games as hard as they can for each other. And if that's what your team says, but yet someone is racially abusing someone, they're acting a way to make fun of someone based off their race, they're saying something to make fun of someone from their race, just anything that you were like that, it's kind of one of those things, like if it pops in your mind and you say that's wrong, that's the light bulb, that's the green light to say something. And again, if that doesn't work, if they blow you off and what do you know, then that's when you go to a coach about it. And then, because I think I wouldn't get let's say, for example, if one of your African American friends on your team and another teammate was talking bad about them, you don't go to that African American teammate and say, "Hey, she's saying this about you," because what you're also telling that person is you didn't say anything. And again, going back to earlier, we talked about being supportive vocally. So I think the best thing you can do is if you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. And say it with pride, say it with strength, and go to battle for that teammate. Because that's going to, because there's going to be maybe there's a teammate who kind of gets in on the jokes and the stuff like that. And, they don't say it, but they laugh along with it. But then when they see that Anna doesn't agree with the way that they're talking and they really respect Anna, then all of a sudden another person's on your side. So I think the best thing you can do is be respectful to that teammate by saying something. And again, if that doesn't work, if you get blown off, then you go the next step up.
Sometimes a joke might be insensitive or go a little too far. How do we apologize and heal when that does happen?
The moment I think that you realize that it's wrong. In most cases, those jokes, at least I would hope, I think and it's a lot better for kids your age because you guys are so much more educated on this topic. If you think to yourself before you say a joke, this might be offensive, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be offensive. It's like anytime somebody walks up and says, "Hey, no disrespect," they're about to disrespect you. It all comes back to treat somebody the way you want to be treated. If you don't want to be made fun of for having blonde hair, don't make fun of someone else for what they look like. Not that I guess the blonde stereotype or whatever, which obviously does not match you whatsoever. But I think sometimes people will make a joke and it's worded in such a way that you just don't understand that it's racial. So my whole life, the joke for me is that I'm not one or the other because I'm both. And when I was in high school, my senior year, another biracial kid moved in. And the big comment was when we were talking together in the hallway, we were the one black guy at our high school, but we also were one of the white guys at our high school if we were together. And honestly, that, it never bothered me knowing where I grew up. It was, and no one ever said it in a bad way. Oh, there's the one black guy in our school. It was always hey, look, it's the black guy in the school. And we would just kind of look up and smile and, kind of go on. It's that I never really took it to heart. And I still don't know. I don't know that I have feelings about it positive or negatively, even all these years later. But the one that really sticks out in my mind where I don't think that people were thinking that it was a joke, but using it as one was after college, I started working and our staff basically, obviously it was in a joke because it became the funny joke for the rest of the year was half of me was our company's EEO. We were able to say that we were an equal opportunity employer because of half of me. And so then it was we'd be at some type of event and it'd be oh, and this is Shaun, he's our EEO. After the 9th time, it was I don't know if this is funny anymore. And especially now that we've taken it outside of our office. So I think the other big part about jokes and stuff like that is if there's any hint, because you don't know how people are going to react. Anybody who knows me knows I'm very laid back. I'm not high strung or on edge or anything like that. So for me, most time I just go with it. Because if I show you that it bothers me, you're going to keep doing it. And that's annoying. I think if you think to yourself, if there's anyone, if I'm saying this to anyone else, not somebody who I know, if I'm going to say this joke, if anyone else besides the people I'm saying it to would be offended, do I need to say it? And there's so many funny jokes out there that are not offensive, that are not racially motivated. Use those jokes if you want to be funny. So we just have to do a much better job of, we have to go back to the time period. I've got a 6-year-old, and we tell her all the time, before you do, think. Think before you do. And before you do, think. And that's something that, again, I think 30-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 50-year-olds could go back and be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
How important is it right now to show and express love?
Oh, so important. So important. Molly Grisham, who's been on our show a couple times, has a quote that she said on our show that the moment she said it, it has been stuck on me forever. And everybody knows I'm a culture guy. I'm a loving guy. Love changes people. People change culture. And my wife has been so vocal about leading with love. I don't understand why. And again, just so many questions that you have. I mean, I could only imagine being your age with all this going on right now and the questions that you have. I can't think to myself, hey, I want people to love me. I want people to treat me so good. I want people to show love for me, that I'm not going to do the same in return for someone else. So the biggest thing that we can do as a country is just love each other. And, maybe that's the hippie in me. I don't know. And if you know me, there's not much hippie in me whatsoever, but I think that's the part that is. Love changes everything. Everything. Think about, like all the kid movies growing up. Anytime the villain had a change of heart, it was typically something about love. Whether it was, a person of attraction, or they fell in love with some type of feeling. Love was what changed the villains. And, that's the crutch of all this is, yeah, you can say these things are missing in our world, and this thing is missing in our world, and this thing is missing in our world. But the biggest thing we're missing right now is love.
So before wrapping up, I just wanted to ask a little bit about how you're adjusting to a new team while working remote, because I know that's a bit of a struggle.
It's a big struggle. So I guess kind of a background on it. So when I got the job, March 3rd was my start date. And the night before, I had everything ready for the week. And our men's coach texted me and was like, hey, what you got planned for this week? And I told him all this stuff. And he was like, did anybody tell you that we're on spring break? And I was like, no. So my first actual week, no one was on campus. But thankfully, the girls came back early on Sunday so that we could meet. And then we started our individual meetings that next week. We started them on Monday. I'm sorry, the day after the team meeting. We started them on Monday. And then on Tuesday, there was this rumor going around that we might get sent home for 2 weeks because supposedly some virus was going around that was threatening everybody. Then Tuesday night, I happened to be at the office late, and they were having an emergency meeting for the spring coaches. And they were like, hey, people are going to be sent home, except for spring sports. You guys are going to be able to stay so that way we can do the seasons. And I was like, what about us? Like, I'd like to do some training because these players got to start learning like how I am as a coach, because I'm very different than most. They're like, yeah, women's soccer can stay too. I was like, all right. Literally by noon the next day, it then turned into, okay, the rumor is that no one's going to be able to stay on campus. And then Wednesday, right before I say school's out, but like when most of the kids were getting out of class, and then we're getting told everybody's going to get sent home for 2 weeks. By Wednesday night, there was rumblings that we might get sent home for the rest of the school year. And I was just like, holy crap, like, are we ever going to get to practice? And so I got to meet with everybody on Thursday and told the girls what was going on, if they were going to get sent home for a couple weeks. And I did, and a lot of them still remind me, I made the comment, I said, I would not be surprised if this is the last time we see each other until next season. And little did I know that was going to be the actual case. So what's been the struggle, obviously, is the actual soccer part of it. Like, we can watch videos and we can talk about games that we're watching and stuff like that. But until we're actually on the field together and working together and learning a new way of playing and learning new terminology and stuff like that, it's really difficult. On the personality side of things, I think we've really been learning about each other. I think the players have been learning who I am. The players, I'm learning about them still to this day. I try to check in with them. We try to meet once a week. And then if there are some who aren't on the meeting for work or whatever reason, I try to reach out to them that week and just kind of check to see how things are doing. It's been very educational because obviously there's a lot of coaching books out there. There was never any books on coaching during the pandemic. And so I've felt very, very awesome of how all of us together have been working through this with my program, our program. So and the thing is, it just like, it's been burning, just like you're waiting for the next season to start. Like you can't wait to get on the field and get playing. This pandemic has really helped that with our program because we're just like, we're doing all this talk and it's like, can we just get out and play? And then the NAIA just came out yesterday actually and said, no practice until August 15th. And our players are texting our group text. They're like, why can we not practice together when we come back on campus? And I was just like, that's just what the rules are. And they're like, okay. I'm like, but you can still do stuff on your own with a ball. I just can't do anything with you. So it's good to hear that, that motivation and that like wanting to get back out there and play. And I'm sure, I always joke with people like, oh, I took this job at such the right time. My friend Bianca Kyle just took the University of Minnesota Morris job like 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, I thought I had it bad. Like she's doing literally everything virtually and because she's in Illinois right now. And so that it's just been, we're able to see, I think a lot of people have had to adapt. And everybody knows I love Randy Waldrum and Randy will probably admit he's not the most technological guy there is. But to see the way he's adapted to technology and doing things virtually has been super cool to watch. And I know like we're getting ready to have a virtual recruit day. And we did one as like a trial run to see like if we could pull it off, where we invited some of our recruits to come for a Zoom call. And we had a virtual tour video ready that we shared, we shared the screen and they were able to partake in that. We had our school president and admissions counselors, financial aid people on this visit, and it went really, really well, surprisingly. So then I made it known like, hey, like I did this virtual day. Our team was a big part of it. The recruits loved it. We got a lot of compliments. And so, a lot of people started asking like, hey, like, can I see it? And I was like, yeah. And I started sharing it to all my friends who are coaches and they've all been doing their virtual recruit days over the last couple of weeks. I'm just like, this is super cool. Like how we're doing this. And unfortunately, I think that's the new normal. And so I think that's what a lot of coaches are embracing what we have to do right now, because I think this is how it's going to be for the foreseeable future.
So I have one final question that I always ask every guest I have on. So what do you hope people will remember about your impact to soccer and the world?
Oh, man. Anna. The hard-hitting questions. Told your dad not to make me cry. Oh, man. I never knew what that answer was until my grandfather passed away. And the compliments that people always told me about him after his passing. And of course, people would say the same thing while he was still alive. And, if I'd run to him, oh, your grandpa's the greatest guy. And, this is the guy that literally every homeless person he saw, he'd find the first drive-through or gas station and go get a drink and a sandwich or something and then take it back to him. Never met a stranger in his life. All the states I've traveled to, somehow, some way, I've run into someone who knows my grandfather. It's insane to think about. But after he passed, reading all the comments on a Facebook post that we had made through his account, which is crazy to think about. My grandfather was on Facebook. The comments that people made on my post about him, that's when I realized, I guess, like what I want people to say about me. By no means am I the smartest person in the room, and I clearly show that a lot. Um, which I mean, you have personally seen, especially in Baltimore. Um, I I just I want to be known first and foremost as a great father, not just to my own kids though. And I want to be known as, I'm going to use my wife's words here, because I'm not the best at, like, my wife will say I'm the worst complimenter in the world. Um, my wife always tells people that I have the best heart that she's ever seen. And so if I can do enough in the world to make people other than my own wife say that about me, then I think I did a pretty good job. And I made this post actually when my grandfather passed away. If I can make half of an impact that he did on the lives of everyone he was involved in, whether it was through his music, whether it was through athletics or through faith or whatever it may have been, I will have done a pretty dang good job on earth. I feel like I'm writing my eulogy right now. I keep joking that, like, the closer to 40 I get, like, I'm like starting to realize, like, oh, like my time is coming. I just want people to, let's make it fun. I want people to, when they think about the impact that I've made, I guess, on the world and on the game of soccer, I just want people to be like, man, that dude was a good brother. And all the things that go along with, we say that on the show a lot, of the good brothers and good sisters. That's what I guess I want to be known for. Someone who always put others first. And not only did I put others first, but I cared about everyone and everything. And as for the impact on the game, I don't know what type of impact I'm going to make on the game. I don't think I'm a revolutionist whatsoever in the game of soccer, but I hope that maybe I show with what I do with soccer is that there's not just one way for the game, and there's more than one way to make it beautiful. And maybe the impact I leave on soccer is that there's a group of coaches who watch how I coach and say, okay, like, that works. It's not by any means United Soccer Coaches standards or United States Soccer Federation standards, but what he does works. Maybe I'll give that a shot. So yeah, I just want to be known as a good brother.
One thing Shaun really highlights while we talk today is using your voice. You can use social media, sign petitions, donate, or even participate in a protest. You can use your voice to support people in whatever way possible, no matter their skin color. The game should be a safe place for many, and it's very important to keep it that way. So keep an open mind and help your players get through these times and help them understand it. And until I see you next time, remember to keep the game beautiful.